Destruction that will echo through Lebanon's future for years to come. Now, only glimpses remain of the lives that lived here and the 4 apartment blocks that stood until 3:30 this morning. Scenes repeated across the Dahaya district of South Beirut, a sprawling suburb hollowed out by Israeli bombs and fear, a suburb still burning.
There's an intense heat coming from the basement of that building. The sky is dense with the smoke. It smells acrid. The scale of destruction around here is vast. Not just at this site, but everywhere you drive around Dahaya, there are signs of these airstrikes. And just a moment ago, we heard Israeli planes in the sky. There is a tense feeling now that as bad as all this is, yet more could be coming.
Fresh fire from the sky did soon fall, but they brought mere tremors compared to the seismic eruptions that levelled large parts of Dahaya last night. An overwhelming use of force focused on breaking Hezbollah's command and control centre and decapitating an entire movement. Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah led Hezbollah for 32 years. He was one of the most influential figures in the Middle East and top of the Israeli hit list.
The leader of the terrorist army Hezbollah was killed by Israel Defense Forces in a precise strike in Beirut last night while he was in Hezbollah's central headquarters commanding more imminent attacks against the people of Israel.
And then the immediate response read out on Iranian state TV. Ayatollah Khamenei calling on Muslims to stand by Hezbollah with whatever means they have, confronting, he says, the wicked regime of Israel. But inflicting this wound on Hezbollah meant unleashing hell on a densely populated area of a capital city. We may not know the civilian cost of last night's airstrikes for weeks to come. In their droves, they fled their homes last night, an evacuation en masse, and now the city's streets are littered with loved ones nursing each other's shock. This family has huddled exhausted on this corner since the early hours. Not a sound uttered by these children, stunned into silence.
My daughters were terrified from the situation, very scared. Netanyahu is aiming to kill small kids. This little one, look at her and her. They are not ready to see war.
Saturday morning at the Corniche by Beirut Marina, in place of the walkers and weekend runners, an encampment of the displaced, the war-weary, and the odd person checking on the new neighbours. It's not just the residents of Dahaya dealing with the aftermath, but those that race to help them too.
Of course, the situation was so hard. The bombs were like raining everywhere. Of course, it's something hard for the people to be there,
it's hard
trying
for you
to work.
too.
Exactly, to work there and help, and then at the same time be afraid if they're gonna stay alive or not.
But did that go through your mind last night, that whether or not you would survive?
If I'm gonna say no, I'm gonna be lying.
But for the emergency vehicles, every corner of this sprawling district is now desolate. A district that's a Hezbollah stronghold. This street of Dahaya is 3 kilometers from the center, but here too the smoke rises. The emergency workers shows us part of the rocket that pierced this building and what may have lay beneath.
This apartment block, locals have told us, was hit at 3 a.m. but because there had already been so many airstrikes by that time, it had already been evacuated. Now, we don't know exactly what's hit it, but it appears from looking inside that some form of penetrating bomb has gone deep under the ground, and that's where it's exploded, and that's where all of this smoke is billowing from now.
It's not only the buildings smouldering across this nation. With tensions rising, the Lebanese army have been deployed in fear of, not Israel, but civil unrest within these borders. As displaced families took shelter on the steps of Beirut's Blue Mosque, those that could forgot about the horrors of the night before. But for most, a dark cloud looms over these lands.
Well, Paul joins us now live. We've heard about the Lebanese and Iranian reaction. What has been the wider response to Nasrallah's death?
Well, in the last hour, we've had a response from Joe Biden calling the killing, quote, a measure of justice for many of his victims. That will not go down well with many here. There is already a sense that while it may be Israel that's done everything over the last couple of weeks to Lebanon, they've done it, and at no point has the US stepped in to intervene. They feel that the US is the one who has the relationship, the authority to do that. It's something we've heard countless times from people that we speak to up and down the country. In fact, today, as we were talking to distressed people, we have to be very sensitive because of the amount of anti-West sentiment. In the last half hour, the US State Department has ordered families of some US diplomats to leave. But the tenseness isn't just international. There is a level of fear on the streets here. Earlier on, we saw swarms of tanks being deployed because of fear of civil unrest. Right now, restaurants are closed. This is a city waiting for what may unfold and fearing what may unfold.
Paul McNamara in Beirut. Well, Hassan Nasrallah became a hugely influential figure in the Middle East. During more than 3 decades leading Hezbollah, he transformed it into a powerful military and political force with Iran's backing. So, to explore how pivotal he was as a figure for 32 years, over to our chief correspondent, Alex Thompson.
War is claim and counterclaim, but around noon today, Hezbollah agreed with Israel. Syed Hassan Nasrallah was dead. At some point during Friday's airstrikes on Beirut's southern suburbs, Israel says it struck what it called an underground Hezbollah command bunker beneath a residential building after intelligence that the Hezbollah leader was there at a meeting.
طبعا الهدف هو هز معنويات حزب الله.
32 years leading Hezbollah's state within a state. Militia, of course, but an extensive social, political and welfare mini-government. Lebanese political leaders came and went. Nasrallah, and thus Iran, who fund and supply Hezbollah for proxy war on Israel, was always there.
I think as the US found in both Iraq and Afghanistan, where you are dealing with a movement rather than just a leader or an established government, you can kill as many of the leaders as you like, and there will be more leaders moving in, taking over. The Israelis hope that these will be intimidated, but the risk is that you get a leadership in charge of Hezbollah now that is only going to seek revenge.
Israeli officials released this photo claiming to be Prime Minister Netanyahu ordering the airstrike from New York. US officials were, it seems, kept in the dark. His UN speech, long on war, short on diplomacy, pointedly warning Iran by name, Lebanon by implication.
There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East.
Then he said, we are winning. Certainly a series of body blows to Hezbollah, the recent exploding pagers and then walkie-talkies instilling terror into the organisation. Alongside that, though, a series of strikes killing the Hezbollah leadership. Hassan Nasrallah, the supreme leader, dead, leaving Hezbollah leaderless, probably not for long. Last Tuesday, an Israeli attack killed Hezbollah's rocket division commander, Ibrahim Kubaisi, in South Beirut. 4 days earlier, Ibrahim Akil, operations commander, and Ahmad Wapi, another top commander, killed in the same attack. Back in July, Fawad Shukr, Nasrallah's right-hand man, killed in South Beirut. Hezbollah stepped up firing its rockets into Israel the day after the October the 7th attacks. It has not stopped since. So what now for Iran, who set up, supplies and sponsors Hezbollah to deliver its war against Israel by proxy?
There is a new president who is keen to try and improve the lot of the Iranian people, which they can only do if there is relative peace in the region, some kind of rapprochement with the US that reduces the cost of sanctions. On the other hand, there is the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Defense Force, who are keen to continue prosecuting the campaign against Israel through their proxies.
Already over 800 people killed and well over 100,000 displaced by Israel's Lebanon attacks. the Israelis calling up reservists, moving ground forces towards the border as the airstrikes pound every day. But remember this, Nasrallah became leader back when the Israelis killed his predecessor, Abbas al-Musawi. Israel wanted to behead the snake, as it put it. Instead, in Nasrallah, it got a far, far more potent leader.
Well, joining me now from Beirut is the Iranian academic Mohammad Morandi, who is normally based in Tehran. Good evening. What difference do you think the death of Hassan Nasrallah and so many of his senior commanders makes?
Contrary to what is being said in the West, I think it's going to have a very negative impact for the West and for the Israeli regime. I was about 1,000 meters away from the airstrike. And I lived near there in the past because I was here on sabbatical a few years ago. So I know that neighborhood pretty well. These were all residential towers. They just flattened them and killed everyone inside. In fact, I think a young husband and wife that I know were killed because I can no longer contact them. So this country, the region, is outraged by the fact that the West is supplying bunker busters to slaughter and massacre, and the West will justify anything that the Israeli regime does. If killing Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah or other commanders while slaughtering hundreds besides them is exactly what they did or pretended to do in Gaza when they would simply massacre people and then say that there was some person from Hamas there. That's fine with the West because the West is racist, to be very blunt, and Israel is racist.
But what is their capability?
They work together well. You're saying?
What is their capability, though, given so much of their leadership has been taken out, and how will Iran help or direct them?
Well, Hezbollah actually grew up. It was created as a result of a previous Israeli regime invasion of Iraq, where they took Beirut. And in one instance, in the Sabra and Shatila camp, which is not far from where I am, not too far, they and their local militia allies massacred 4,000 Palestinians and Lebanese in 36 hours. So Israeli genocide is nothing new. This goes way before Hezbollah. Hezbollah was created then and drove them out. It was a very small organization, but it grew gradually more and more powerful. The weakest link, I have no doubt that the weakest link is Beirut, because Beirut is where all the Western embassies are, where all the Western NGOs are. They infiltrate, they spy, and also those groups, those militias that I told you about, they have people everywhere. So Beirut has always been a very dangerous place, a very good place for Western intelligence agencies. And this was also the case before Hezbollah, during the PLO time. But outside of Beirut, where Hezbollah has thousands of kilometers of underground tunnels, far more extensive and sophisticated than Hamas or Islamic Jihad in Gaza, the story is very different. They have huge numbers of people ready for war with sophisticated weapons, missiles that are very well protected. This is not Beirut. So if the Israelis think that they're going to walk into Lebanon, I think they're going to be beaten badly. Hezbollah is...
Right, but what is Iran going to do? I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just a bit of a delay on the line. What will Iran do to help? You know, and why has there not been a response, a missile response from Hezbollah yet?
I think in general, from the very beginning, what happened was that Hezbollah actually entered the battle in order to defend Gaza, to draw forces, Israeli forces away from Gaza, to help the resistance and also to help keep kids alive in Gaza. So Hezbollah took a voluntary decision. They made a sacrifice, and they lost many people during the last year, but effectively drew away half the Israeli army during this year. And obviously they were very effective, and that's why the Israelis are now seeking revenge. But Hezbollah has from the very beginning, and the same is true with Iran, the same is true with the axis of resistance is that they don't want to be the first that escalates, because they want the global South and the international community, forget the West. The West is pro-Israel, ethno-supremacism, pro-racism. They're useless. But the rest of the international community sides with Iran. We saw this brutal monster Netanyahu at the UN General Secretary, when he was giving his speech at the General Assembly, how the global South walked out. So Iran and the Hezbollah want to keep him isolated and then escalate, so that everyone sees that this retaliation is legitimate.
Mohammed Marandi, we must leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, earlier today, I spoke to Avi Issakarov, a Middle East analyst and Israeli journalist who is in Tel Aviv. And I started by asking him what he thinks the killing of Hezbollah leader Nasrallah has achieved for Israel.
I think that what Israel tried to do is to rebuild its deterrence vis-a-vis the terrorist organizations, and actually to get rid of one of the most dangerous people on earth. I think that what he managed to do in Hezbollah is to turn it from a very small, radical militia into the mainstream of Lebanese politics and a huge military organization that has long arms in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and of course, took over Lebanon.
What danger is there that his successor is even more extreme?
Well, I'm not sure that, there's something here to threat Israel with someone more extreme than Hassan Nasrallah. It's like you take the craziest guy in the block and say, we might bring the craziest guy in the block instead of him. So way worse than him, I don't think that it can happen. I think that only better can come out of this situation. Because again, Hassan Nasrallah wasn't just another terrorist. He wasn't just another leader of a terrorist organization. He was a charismatic leader. He gained a lot of support and popularity all over the Arab world. And yes, by cutting the head out of Hezbollah, you send a message. You send a message that Israel had enough of terrorists trying to provoke it, trying to actually terrify the state of Israel and the Israeli citizens.
A lot of people are speculating that this pushes Iran into a position where nuclear weapons become perhaps their only avenue to maintain their sense of strength.
I don't think that this is the case, since Iran was heading to a nuclear bomb way before Hassan Nasrallah became the leader of Hezbollah, and even before the Islamic Revolution. The Iranians started with their romance with a nuclear bomb even before the fall of the Shah in 1979. So I don't think that there's any connection here, that it might encourage them to get a nuclear bomb. They want a nuclear bomb regardless of Hassan Nasrallah, yes or no.
And strategically, in terms of Israel's war aims, does a land invasion of southern Lebanon still make sense now?
Look, I don't think that something looks like reasonable right now in the situation that we find ourselves today. I think that, yes, there is some probability for a ground invasion, an Israeli ground invasion into southern Lebanon. At the end, I think that the mission, the aim of the state of Israel will be to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River. Can we get to that without sending a ground invasion or ground forces into southern Lebanon? That's the biggest question. If after a few days of escalation with rockets and missiles and whatever, there will be some attempt by the US and France to negotiate, to de-escalate the situation that would lead to the withdrawal from Hezbollah to north of the Litani, so we won't need a ground invasion. But if it won't happen, so we will probably see Israeli forces operating on Lebanese soil.
Avi Issakarov, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.